Welcome back to RP1 Release. Today it's time to get started into some science, or to get us more science. We're only on 2.9 science at the moment. That leaves me very little options of how actually to get any more R&D done. So I took our original sort of prototype rocket and made a few changes. First of all, I'm just going to try, because this RD100, well, this is 100. Let's just change to RD101. This should have the capability to gimbal, and I want to see if it's enough to correct for the rest of it. So I'm going to take these off, and I can always put them back on if necessary. Let me just save that for a second. So yes, we have gimbals at the very bottom here, and if we move all the way up here, I've changed this top stage. So going from 4 to 2 XASRs, and that gives me a thrust weight ratio of 1.44. Acceptable, perfectly fine. Still with the spin motors, still with the ullage, and it's still the interstage around it. Above here, we've then got a tank 1, because we don't have tank 2 unlocked yet, and in here I've basically got enough fuel to keep this going for 1 minute 17. It's only about 65 seconds rated time for the XSRs, so if we manage an extra 10 seconds, I'm not too worried about that. Above that, we've got a film camera, and we can't really do much with this other than attach it. It's not small enough. We don't have a miniaturized version to put inside a payload bay. I want to keep everything to 1.25 meters if possible. And above that, we have a battery with a couple of biological sample capsules and a couple of other experiments, thermometer and barometer. And then we will close all of that with a nose cone. Now, I could build a payload around it, but just for now, and just for testing purposes, I'm going to put this on top and then just use the move tool to bring it down. Well, hopefully bring it down. Let me just grab the... There we go. So we're going to bring that down. That's going to clip, isn't it? I don't want it clipping at all. So let's get rid of that for a second. And what can we actually do here? I think I'm going to just take these off, and I'm going to take off this battery, and let's see how it actually works without the battery. Because then we can put these here like this, and this should then, if I just snap everything in place. Hopefully you will then detach into the right place as well. Attach even? Yep, yeah you will. So that should be mostly done. Let's just check the staging on this and we'll do a simulation and see whether this thing flies properly. We've got the bottom rocket motor releasing the clamps, getting rid of the first stage entirely, spin, ullage, boost, and then of course the main problem with this upper stage is going to be we have to make sure we're fairly high up in the atmosphere, otherwise this isn't going to work too well. But we'll save that, and then let's actually get going on that. So this would cost 3,773 by itself. Let's see how much the first stage would actually cost. First stage is going to be 1,400 of that. So I will also, once we've done the simulation, have a look at what the cost of that this entire first stage is, as is, using these initial tanks, the built-in ones, the ones that aren't procedural. So 1,400 minus, well, it's only about 200 for the engine. So yeah, 1,200 of that is these tanks and the fuel. So we'll figure out what that actually costs if we convert over to procedural tanks. And then we'll try tooling them and see how much saving we get, how many times we need to reuse this to get some savings back. Because that tooling cost will be substantial. But then the cost should go down, and also the speed of construction could go down. Now this will take 129 days as it is, so we'll also monitor that speed when we replace it with procedural parts. But for now, first things first, let's get to the simulation. Now, what I'm going to expect to happen is, because this can gimbal but doesn't have multiple exhausts that can gimbal independently, I expect this thing to start rolling and be unstoppable once it starts rolling. So we're going to see how MechJeb actually deals with it, and then of course we can put basically the controllable surfaces back in. So let's just go into ascent guidance, and we're just going to tell it to go to an orbit of 900 kilometers. It's not going to make it, but that will make sure it actually it basically picks up a fairly decent slope. Yeah, so there you can see the guidance for that. That's fine. Orbit inclination, I'm just going to say, actually, let's just go for 90 degrees, shall we? Oops, not 28.9. Let's just go for 90 degrees. And we can hide the ascent nav ball guidance. That's absolutely fine. And the ascent path, you'll see here, if we just change this a little bit, we can control the turn shape to basically lift it upwards. And this will mean it'll be heading quite far up before it starts trying to go sideways. All right, so let's engage the autopilot and start the engines, and let's see whether... Ooh, did I forget to fill the tanks? Or has this got lead in it still somewhere? No. Oh, I changed the engine after filling the tanks. Yeah, okay. Terminate the simulation. Need to just change the fuel over. 1 second. Okay, let's try that again. Go. There we go. The engine is coming up. And the whole thing's going to take off. Now, we won't see much until this tries to actually tilt. And then we'll see whether it actually manages to stop itself from turning. See, it's already not stopping itself. And that's expected. I have no problems. As long as MechJeb can continue to control that, I have no problem with actually rotating on its way up. That's not really an issue. However, you can see already we're going supersonic very soon and very quick off the launch pad. This thing is quite high in thrust to weight ratio. So what we should really do is try and weigh this thing down or have a larger upper stage. Yeah, and it becomes uncontrollable. It needs those control surfaces. So that's fine. We'll put them back on and I will see you higher in the flight once we put them back on. And here we are again in the upper stage of the flight. We have photography available to us if we want to take it now. However, it will only get us, well, we have to recover it, in fact. So that's going to be a no, or at least I'll have to put a parachute in or something like that kind of lines. I think that we're just going to ignore that, if possible. And but we do have biological samples. We'll see if we've got the science for those for space when we get to it. However, for right now, we're far enough up in the atmosphere that we can either wait until this thing starts to tilt over, maybe, if it has any additional stuff, additional air to push against, or we can just send it now and see how well it goes. So it's a simulation, so why not? Let's see what this upper stage does. Separate, spin, ullage, and burn. Okay, so our XARs ×2 are now running. We have a sync guide still running, but oh, forgot about that. You can, if as soon as you turn off autopilot, it disengages the engines. Really annoying when that happens. There should be an option for it not to do that. However, I don't care because that first stage is proven. It will work fine as long as the XSRs work. However, yeah, we would get 1.1 science for this if we were able to recover it, that is. Biological samples, well, no, that's not biological samples, that's biological samples. We get another 3.4 if we're able to recover those. So that's another way, or we should think about it. We could maybe put the whole thing on top of a rocket in the same way we did that suborbital return, but suborbital return is kind of harder without heat shields. So there's that to go. And then what we're really looking for at some point is some kind of biome stuff. So if we just keep on heading up here, and is there any biome stuff to be had? Shores would also give us photography and biological samples, and we're out of power. Okay, so we need power, we need possibly recovery, and we need some other stuff like that. So let's head back to the VAB and see if we can add any of those elements in to get started. So more important than any return is that we get the bio samples back. The film camera can wait. It doesn't give us as much basically science as the bio samples, and we might get 2 of them, so it may be worthwhile trying to bring those back. Now I've emptied this tank to see what it's like when it's empty. Its center of mass is down here, and this means well, hopefully it should end up with this side down in the atmosphere. You never quite know though. It's not really very wide at the bottom for stability concerns, so it's worthwhile giving it a try. And we'll see how well it does before we get to something a lot nicer. So, well, let's just actually go for this. Can we actually... Oh, that's huge. No, we're not going to go for you. Let's just go for one of this. And if we just set this up, if we click on this right now, because we're using this when it's dry, i.e. when there's no fuel in here, we'll have the usual settings. And it seems to be able to take that fine. It will tell you then if it's too much for a parachute, so sometimes you can't actually do that. However, we are going to set this to arm the parachute with number 1, just like before. And that should be enough for the nose cone to go over the top. Maybe I need to build a custom stuff there. That's fine, we will do that. Anything else do we want to put up here? Well, we need batteries, don't we? So let's see how we do in the case of power. Well, this would be 1 ton by itself. That's a lot. I would rather not have a 1 ton battery, but if I was going to put it anywhere, I would put it on top. And then we might have 2 of these. Okay, still reasonable. Hopefully those wouldn't burn off. But underneath there, we would probably need to have some kind of structural payload bay. It doesn't even need to open, so you know, we would just do fine with a nose cone. But again, we should probably do this properly. So that's huge, of course. But let's just take this off and let's just build a payload bay. A very small one. 1.25, just like the rest of this rocket. And we don't need this to separate, but we do want to shape it appropriately. And we'll add a conic fairing. Like that. Okay. So we could even disable the basically, well, I guess they'd be a bit lighter if we get rid of it. Yeah, okay. We'll leave it as being able to get rid of it. We don't need separation at all. So let's just move that down. And then when we go to the parachutes, we're actually just going to do that as well. And we're not going to even need to worry about separation. In fact, can we disable separation? That's the fairing. I want the insides. Disable staging of the decoupler. Yeah, that's what I wanted. But we can still get rid of the sides, the fairings. Okay, so we've got a battery, we've got some stuff, some science stuff, and we've got a couple of parachutes, and maybe it'll return. Who knows? All right, we'll put everything else back. There we go. And how much is it going to cost now? 6,700. Okay, that's just because of the science stuff on the top here. All right, so let's take a look at this lower stage then. Let's see what the difference is in cost between this and, well, the procedural version. So let's take off this. And if we take off these, well, let's take these off first of all, and these. The better cost of these tanks is not very much at all. It's, and that, is that full? That is full. Okay, so we're only spending 29.69. That's not much, is it? Okay, and how much have we actually got stored in here? Let's just take a look with the engine on. We've got 3,880. Okay, let's get rid of you. And let's go to procedural tanks. Tank 1. And we're going to make sure it's the right size. And then let's just say 6 meters or so. Okay, and let's fill this with ethanol. So we need to extend this until it's actually that same amount. That can't be right, surely. It can't be right. Is this need to be a high pressure tank? No? Really? What's going on there then? That is so odd. Unless I'm mistakenly doing this, but if I remember rightly, that's let's just get the tanks. An 800, another 800, and a 400. And they can all have ethanol, ethanol, ethanol. 3,880. The difference has got to be the weight of the tank. So we can't use these procedural tanks until we get better tanks. Or at least we can, we just wouldn't get anywhere near the same performance out of them. So if you want to imagine that, we're going to cut this down to maybe there, where those cables are. Let's put this in, and let's bring this down in size. Oh, and of course it brings the top in. Fine. So that looks about right. Let's just see what the rough size is. Yeah, so let's bring that in another meter. Okay, that looks around about right, doesn't it? A little bit small, maybe another half meter up. Okay, so 9.5 meters, same width around, it only gets 2,500. Okay, 214 days to build that as well, but that's including the top section. So if we just let's see what it would actually take if we put this back on. Would take us 186 days, so we're obviously spending a lot more time making those procedural tanks. Let's go just to this, and then let's see, is there anything... plain white cylinder. Ethanol, is the engine okay? Yeah, stable. So we don't need the high pressurized version, and that's 3264, so that's marginally better, and only 57 in terms of time for this engine, but yeah, it's still quite expensive. Let's just see how much that would cost if we tooled the tank. Yeah, we're going to cost 5,600 funds. I don't think it's worth it to actually tool this particular tank. Yeah, so I'm not going to... Well, let's see how much this would actually change it by if we did. What would it reduce the cost by? 2,000. So we need to fly at least 3 of these things to see a return. And now let's see what the actual cost of this thing is. So if we just look at the tank cost, so take this away, it's going to cost us only 48. So it's cheaper even than this, but it's not as good performance yet. So I'm not quite as happy with that. I just wanted to do a quick check to see how well that goes. So I'm going to put that away for now. And I'm going to restore from a save anyway, because I just wanted to do this as a test, just to see how well that tooling works at low level. Well, low tank level. We get tank 2 fairly soon, and that will become more, well, much better performance. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to run another test. So once I've made some saving changes, but I will restore the save, then make the test so that the actual money comes out for doing the simulation. So I don't want to leave any missing money or anything like that. So we'll do that, put this back, and I'll see you shortly. Another quick change we could look at just before I finish off, just to try and make this a little bit cheaper, is by looking at a fuel tank for the top section. This is an RCS tank. I actually want something... See, that sort of pancaked fuel tank should actually work. The downside is things are connected the wrong way right now. Yeah, I don't have any avionics for this bottom section. I only have avionics for the top. So if I wanted to support this properly, what we probably need to do first of all is take this off, and I'm just going to clone that top section if I can. I can't clone it because yeah, okay, so let's just grab a new avionics unit then. Avionics procedural. I'm going to put a 1.25 meter avionics in. And what's the actual, what's the size of the rocket here? Give me the rocket mass, 13 tons. So we're going to want, I don't know, maybe 11, 12 tons, something like that at the bottom. 12.8 should do the fine. And then what we can do with this top one is bring this down as small as we actually can manage. Both in, well, not in terms of tonnage, but in terms of size, in terms of length. So that's tiny. But let's just see if we need to just up that a little bit. Excuse me. Just to make it manageable in cost. Yeah, so having it 100 millimeters will manage it in terms of cost. So we've got split avionics. All that means is, and we'll get smaller avionics even than this, all it really means is that you have an upper stage that is technically controllable. It's not right now because of these engines, but you have smaller mass here and a larger mass here, and it pretty much means that you have less issues. You know, you have more performance in that upper stage. We should see that in a second once I just get this back on. I need to just remove this. Remove this. Throw that away for a second. And let's see if we can put this back again without everything just having problems. And it's looking far more Kerbal, unfortunately, but should still work. So we've got 60 seconds on that top tank now, and it's got 1,694. The bottom tank has nearly 3,000, and everything should be good. We do actually need to just rearrange some things, but I'll do that off camera. and we'll see how well the simulation works this time. But we're down to $5.5 grand, so that's getting better even with all these science equipment on the top. So still in a very inefficient first stage rocket because it's going so fast. Mainly I'm going that speed just to get it out of the thick area of the atmosphere quickly. In real solar system, in realistic version 1, when you get some better launch vehicles, we'll be going a lot more flat than this. We'll be going up through the atmosphere for quite some time. Something like 12 minutes to orbit, so it does take a long time to actually do that. However, with this one, we can get pitched fairly high, fairly quickly, and then we're ready to actually go, pretty much. We don't have any control any longer, really. Not much I can do there. I can disengage the autopilot before I actually trigger any more engines this time. And you can see I have control now, but yeah, there's nothing for us to turn around. We can build our own RCS jets at this particular point. You need an extra RCS tank, but you need to construct your own jets. There's no that 5-way thing with the vanilla KSP. On this point you only have single direction jets, so you need to put your own cluster together. So that's possible. And we have telemetry analysis of water, so we can just send that back. That's no problem. And I think we're ready to separate, or at least try. So off we go. Separate. We can get rid of the fairings. And now we're going to spin up. Doesn't really much matter what direction we're going. And that did not burn. Our engine didn't fire. Did I fill this with... I did refill this with fuel. Okay. In any case, we are in space, so we didn't need this upper stage, so we can save that if we want some orbital return. And then we can give it a try coming back down again. Yeah. So, let's go forwards. We need the rotation mod to actually preserve that rotation between time warping. Yeah, so let's just take the biological sample. So it's 3.4 for one of them. And let's go forwards and see if it gives me anything else. I just want to see whether this is actually stable, because remember we have a short variant of this that we can put science on that won't have the second stage at all. I just want to see whether, if we have this first stage, whether it is actually recoverable. So flying high over Earth's water, 2.3 science. No, that's fine. So let's see what happens when they hit the atmosphere. Is this going to be enough, or am I going to have to save for heat shields? So down it comes. You'll see because the centre of mass is quite low, and we can even use engines to keep the centre of mass low on something like this, it should try and recenter itself around this velocity vector, the vector towards the planet. Retrograde, if you want to call it that, but we're not really in orbit anymore. And telemetry analysis, well, I guess we could keep that rather than transmitting it. And we'll now have to see whether this thing survives, because we didn't fire this second stage, but we did go up, and it does look like it's surviving just fine. And parachutes are armed, so when they hit 5 kilometers, this should eject the parachutes. Do we have enough electric charge? Yeah, we have more than enough, quite a lot in fact, so we can reduce that top section. That will of course be moving the central mass upwards even, so that's a little bit dangerous by itself, but no, this seems fine. At least it can recover once we're roughly right in terms of orientation. No connection anymore, so there's nothing I can do, but that's absolutely fine because it is now deploying parachutes and heading down into the water. Hopefully that will slow down. We'll just see when it hits like 1,000. Yeah, 4.8. That's more than good enough for me. And then we can decide what we want to do with this. This stage is actually full of fuel right now, so that could be affecting the central mass as well. So a few more quick changes, but we should be okay for our science launcher. What we actually do with this first stage here is something else entirely. I think we may even be able to just get rid of 2 engines and just go to 1, just to have it move further out and basically make this even cheaper. So the quest for cheapness ensure, just like real government work, carries on. Let's just take actually 2 of these off and let's just put 1 on instead. Let's just make sure it's connected correctly, and we'll take that shroud off again. Yep, there we go. And we can probably just move both of these out a little, just a little touch. And we could move them around as well, I suppose. That looks a little bit nicer. So yeah, this is now thrust to weight ratio of 1, but when we're higher up in the atmosphere, well, in fact, no, that's the actual vacuum seal of the thrust. We don't much care about that thrust level too much. I'm just going to get it so that we have the capability of sending it further out. We're going to take this. I'm going to reduce its length to be as small as I can get it. Good. That should improve our thrust to weight ratio a little bit. Has a little bit, but not too much. And then what we can actually do is just leave this on and decide to just basically leave it fueled and fire it if we want to go further out. The further out we go, however, the faster we go, the more likely this thing is not going to survive when it comes back in. It's worth testing, but in the meantime, that will hopefully take the cost down a little bit with that battery size. There's something else we could do. I suppose we could go to just one parachute. That might be able to save a little bit more on top, or even some kind of fixed nose cone. Something like that would work as well. But that's good enough for me just now. And everything is going to reattach. It needs to have a little bit of a change here for... yeah, it's going to try and attach incorrectly. We just need to add a little bit more... Not height. Extra height, is it? Nope. I need to attach a different module. And then bring in the height the other way. Once I get to the edge, there we go. So the height can come down. Extra height can go up. Yeah, that'll do. Ish. I'll tailor that off camera anyway, you get the idea. And although I was doing this whole thing just by taking parts on and off, I forgot there is actually an easy way to do it. You go down there at the bottom in your toolbar, click on the big pound sign or dollar sign. You'll see we've got this RP0 here thing with tooling, and it gives you the tooling cost, how much it costs untooled, and how much it would cost tooled. So basically, you want to take your tooling cost, take off your tooled cost, I suppose, but that's relatively minimal in all these cases. So just divide by the untooled cost. So you want to see how quickly it pays you back to actually do this. And if you are going to use this multiple times, for example, here the untooled cost versus the tool cost would save me about 650 on every rocket, but it would cost me nearly 3,000. So if I'd flow this 5 times or so, the interstage with the decoupler, then I will get my money back. Pretty much, and it would be savings from there onwards. And it only gets better from there. So for example, the cone egg side fairing at the top, well, that cost 900, this top section, but it will cost 6 if we fueled it. So it's encouraging us to build reusable designs wherever possible. And yeah, this tank I replaced from the default tank. I wasn't sure if we could actually get a high pressure default tank, whereas I know we can here with this one. So if we have a look at the engine, whoops, let's just get rid of that for a second. Is the engine happy with this or not? This was the edge of this thing. The engine is very stable apparently. Okay, so yeah, gone back to procedural tanks there. Fine, so you get the idea. We've got this entire science vessel now that we can launch, and I need to do a little bit of playing around with it more in some more simulations, but we're ready to take on a few more missions. Whenever you take on a mission, try to get Sound and Rocket mission alongside it that you can actually take to reduce the cost even further. But I'll be playing around with this between the episodes, and then I'll show you some real flights next episode with either this craft or the new version of it, once I manage to configure it to be really as nice as I can actually get it. Well, I'll decide what we're going to tool. We're probably going to, once we switch away from this sort of tank to tank 2s, we'll certainly be tooling those. And let's have a look on here. Is there anything in here? Yeah, see the tank 1 at the top, that would save us, well, yeah, it's going to need to be flown a few times. Yeah, if anything, the interstage actually makes the most sense here, because the interstage is part of this lower section, and we're going to keep replacing the top section with different stuff. So if anything, I want to take this interstage and say tool this. So watch our price here, 6,377. We're going to cost 2,800, so that's going to take our total amount down. But then the amount for this rocket should go down. So 6,377 to 4,964. Quite a large difference. And as long as we fly this main bottom stage down here, which we will be doing a few times, we'll make the savings up. And then, of course, we've got a few things on the top that it's saying, hey, you need to actually make savings here. I'll do that off camera. But you get the idea. That's how to build a science vessel, and we'll come back probably next episode now. In fact, it will be next episode. We're just about to hit the time limit. And fly a few, for real, rather than in simulations. So hopefully join me for that. And we'll see you next time. So feel free to subscribe, share if you normally would. Click on the bell for notifications. And, of course, leave other comments. We've got lots of comments on this series from people offering little bits and pieces of advice, so do make sure to review those comments. What I'll also do at the start of the next episode is read out a few of them, because there are people asking about the procedural parts versus the regular tanks. Hopefully I've shown you a few differences in this episode. Yeah, so basically for high pressure tanks to start off with, use this. For low pressure tanks, or any tank that we don't care about, like, you know, the first stage, you can start off with these to cheap out, and later if you want to, if you've got a reliable first stage, you can then tool for it. Now if you want to use tooling straight away, what you'll also find on these tanks, on procedural tanks, let's just get rid of that other display, is that they have a utilization. So if you want less fuel in it, the utilization is sort of the amount of room inside these sections taken up by the tank. The maximum you can set is 88. In previous versions, it used to be 100, but you can't get a perfectly cylindrical tank. It would have sharp corners. So the idea with 88 is that it's got space for lozenge shaped tanks, as you would in real life. But you can lower this down, and that will actually reduce the figures over here, of course, make things lighter. But importantly, the dimension of the tank itself does not change, which means that your tooling costs are preserved, but your fuel costs are variable up to the maximum size. So you want to build your rocket to the maximum size, reduce the utilization, i.e. the amount of tanks that are inside, and then you can customize things to your will. All right, with that tip, I will leave you for this episode, and we'll see you next time for some more RP1 release in KSP 1.3.1. As always, guys, thanks for watching.